A question came up last class about how to work with gradients in Illustrator, which was a good one. The question was, if I've got a box here that's filled with a gradient, how do I change the color of this gradient? There's a couple different gradients I can choose from in Illustrator, but those aren't always that helpful. So that's a good question. There are two control boxes for gradients in Illustrator. One is in your tools palette. So if I select this gradient tool, basically I can control the direction and distance that gradient covers. I'm going to undo all of those, but that's basically all that tool does. There's also in your windows here a gradient window. If you don't see that, that's under Window Gradient, and you should be able to find it. And this is where you can control more about that gradient, like what color it is and what type it is. So I can have a linear or a radial gradient here, and this is where I can control the color. So I can also control the angle. So if I want to type in 90 degrees or minus 90 degrees, I can control the direction that gradient goes with this palette. I can also control the color by double clicking on the little dropper icon here, and I can either choose from my color swatches or from the color picker. So any color that I want to become the gradient can. This one fades from white to orange. I could also fade from orange to orange and or yellow to orange. And I can also control, if I click on either one of these, I can control the opacity of that end of the blend. So if I want this to start at 0 opacity, it will be translucent. It'll be completely see-through. And let me do this. Let me go File, Place. We just get an image in here. And that's very big, so I'm going to figure out, this is 260 pixels, copy, transform to 60. Okay, so I've got an image that's the same size as this, send to back, and you can see my gradient over top of my image here is 100% opacity at the bottom, but 0 opacity at the top. So that's how I can control the color and opacity in my gradients. I can also, I'm going to show you this, but I don't recommend it. I can have a third color in the middle here. So if I wanted a third color here to be red in the middle, I can do that. There are actually in the swatch window, there is actually a collection of, if this little library thing, there is a gradients palette where I can choose a bunch of different existing gradients. So if I want it to be this one, it can be that. But if I want to start with this one and say that's close, but let me edit that, then I can come in here and say, let's get rid of that middle color. Let's make this one 0. Let's make the direction minus 90. And now I've got a gradient that works pretty well. I can also, the last thing is I can control gradient or linear. There's a little switch here that if I want to flip the direction of the gradient, I can do that. I can control with linear the percentage of this. I'm going to keep it at 100. And the linear gradient tool is a little bit different. When I select this one, it controls how it grows. So I'm going to undo those back to that. And then I could also use the blending mode. So if I want the, if I go to the, I don't even see it here. I might have closed it. Window, transparency. I can change the blending mode here and get a gradient that overlays a photo. So there's hopefully some helpful information about the two different gradient tools and how to modify gradients in Illustrator.